There were a lot of ballot measures this year, so I'm going to go state by state and tell you which ones passed and which ones didn't. This is part 1 of 8. First, we have Alabama. They had 2 ballot measures, one failed, one didn't. This first one was to exempt local laws or local constitutional amendments from the budget isolation resolution process. That didn't pass. This one, having to do with Franklin County and its management of lands, did pass. Next is Alaska. Now, they had 2 ballot measures, one of which isn't finished counting yet, but it looks like it will pass. The first was to raise the minimum wage to $15 and require paid sick leave for employees. And the other one is to repeal the top 4 ranked choice voting system that was adopted in 2020. Next is Arizona, and they had 13 ballot measures. This first one is a bit confusing, so I'll get into it in a second, but the second one here, create a signature distribution requirement for citizen-initiated ballot measures based on state legislative districts. That didn't pass. Now for this first one. Basically, it enshrines the partisan primaries for partisan offices in the Constitution, and would also provide that the state's direct primary election law supersedes local laws, charters, ordinances, and rules that are inconsistent with that law. This did not pass. Next, allow the legislature to terminate state of emergency or change the emergency powers granted to the governor during a state of emergency. That did not pass. Provide for challenges to an initiative measure or constitutional amendment after the filing of the measure with the Secretary of State. That didn't pass. Look at this one. End term limits for state Supreme Court justices and Superior Court justices. That didn't pass, thankfully. Another one, allow for tipped workers to be paid 25% less per hour than the minimum wage, provided that the worker's total compensation is not less than the minimum wage plus $2. That didn't pass. This first one here, provide a constitutional right to abortion. That passed. This proposition is basically the same as the last one, just enshrining it in the Constitution. This next one is a little weird. Establish a $20 fee on every conviction for a criminal offense, which would go to pay a benefit of $250,000 to the family of the first responder that was killed in the line of duty. This passed. This other one, allow for property owners to apply for property tax refunds. That passed. Require that anyone convicted of child sex trafficking must receive a sentence of life imprisonment. That passed. This one is another weird one. Provide for several changes to criminal and immigration laws, including allowing police to arrest non-citizens who enter Arizona from foreign countries. That passed, but that's already a thing, so. This is another weird one. Prohibit a proposed rule from becoming effective if that rule is estimated to increase the regulatory cost by more than $500,000 within the 5 years after the implementation. This didn't pass. It's a weird law anyways. Next is Arkansas. They only had 2 ballot measures, both of which passed, which was to allow the state lottery to fund scholarships, and to repeal the authorization for a casino license in Pope County and require countywide voter approval for any new casino licenses. Next is California. This first one that passed was to allow for bonds to be issued for veteran housing and housing for homeless persons. It passed. Very slim margin, though. Issuing $10 million bonds to fund construction and modernization of public education facilities. That passed. Increase the minimum wage to $18 per hour. It's not in yet, but it looks like it's not going to pass. And then repeal the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act. This act basically prohibited rent control on single-family homes and housing completed after February 1st, 1995, meaning that in California this form of rent control has stayed legal. Next, requires health insurance providers to spend at least 98% of revenues from federal discount prescription drug programs on direct patient care. Again, this hasn't been finished, but it looks like it's going to pass. The next one permanently authorizes tax on managed care organizations to fund Medi-Cal programs. That passed. Another one is increasing penalties for certain drug crimes and theft convictions and allow a new class of crime to be called treatment mandatory felony. This passed. Repeal Proposition 8, which establishes a constitutional right to marry. That passed. Issue $10 billion in bonds to fund state and local parks. That passed. Lower the vote threshold from 2/3 to 55% for local bond measures to fund housing projects and local city infrastructure. This didn't pass, meaning that they rejected making it easier for cities to fund housing projects and public infrastructure. And then the big woozy, remove involuntary servitude as punishment for a crime from the state constitution. That didn't pass. Next, and finally, is Colorado. So to provide a state constitutional right to abortion, that passed. Provide that each K-12 child has the right to school choice. That didn't pass. expands the property tax exemption for veterans with a disability. That passed. A measure creating an independent judicial discipline adjudicative board and creates rules for the judicial discipline process. That also passed. Removing the right to bail in cases of first-degree murder. That passed. Removing a provision in the Colorado Constitution that says only a union of one man and one woman shall be valid or recognized as marriages in this state. Repealing that. That passed. Creating deadlines for filing initiative and referendum petition signatures. That didn't pass. Prohibiting trophy hunting. That didn't pass. This one's a little bit weird. Require that persons convicted of certain violent crimes serve more in their sentences before being eligible for parole. It doesn't really define what amount of sentence that really is, but it did pass. Another little weird one, create the profession of veterinary professional associate, requiring a master's degree, registration, and the State Board of Veterinary Medicine. This passed. Another one here, creating a new fund for law enforcement recruitment, retention, training, and death benefits. That passed. Establishing top 4 primaries and ranked choice voting. That did not pass. This one about sports betting, allowing the state to retain collected revenue above $29 million annually from the tax on sports betting proceeds. That one passed. Another one is levying a 6.5% excess tax on firearms and ammunition. This one passed. So that's it for part 1. Stay tuned for the other 7 parts, and like and follow if you want more stuff like this.